Hello guys, today we're gonna take a look at 5 things to know to get the best sound possible out of our amps. I played the intro using this little amp, which is a Fender Mini Deluxe, which we all know sucks, but that was just to show that even something like this can become useful if we address these 5 variables. These are things that I ignored for the longest time, or just didn't realize were that important, or just gave for granted.
Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind?
So what we will do is talking about these 5 variables and what I usually do with my amps, but the cool thing is that you can tweak them as you like to get the sound that is best for you. So let's start. So the number 1 variable is the speaker and the cab. I couldn't believe how much of a difference can the speaker and the cab make on the overall sound. There are many kinds of speakers that have different frequency response, and so some might be mid-heavy, some might be more bright, some might be bass-heavy. So some speakers work better with certain amps, and other speakers work better with other amps. And also the cab changes the frequency response of an amp. So if you're not satisfied with your amp, you might want to consider, before buying a new one, changing the speaker and trying a different one or a different cab that better suits your amp or the style you're playing. There are plenty of speaker shootouts on YouTube, so it might be worth checking them out. Or you could get a cab simulator like the Torpedo Live, which will let you play with any speaker or cab that you want, with the added bonus that you can go directly into the PA, so you can crank actually your amp and still be friends with your neighbors and the police department. Oh! And that's exactly what I want to do with my Hot Rod Deluxe. I would like to buy a Torpedo Live so that I can find a speaker that really can make this amp sound at its best. Regarding the Mini Deluxe, I wanted to hear how this sounded with different cab. So what I did is plugging my Hot Rod Deluxe speaker into the headphones out, because this doesn't have a speaker output. It worked very well actually. Now the sound is really big. Of course, this is such a small speaker, you can get much out of it. Number 2 is EQing. This is something that I didn't pay much attention for the longest time, and you might say, are you stupid? And I would answer, yes, a little bit. But I really thought that putting everything in the middle, like at 6 on Hot Rod Deluxe, that would be, I thought that was the best thing to do, because you don't want too much of anything, but you still want something of everything, you know?
It's time to stop! It's time to stop, okay?
One day I heard JD Simo talking about EQing on his amps, and he said that if you want to hear the full signal, you have to put everything to the max. And indeed I discovered that EQing on an amp, the EQ section, is only subtractive, and that means that you can only subtract frequencies from the original signal and not add anything. Instead, the presence control is an active control, and it can add mid and high frequencies to the signal. That completely changed my approach to EQ. Now what I do is put everything to the max and the presence to 0. I from that subtract what I do not need. That's usually bass and a little bit of treble. After that, especially if I am using overdrive, I add the presence just to give a little more edge. Also, whenever you change the room you are playing in, it's suggestible to reset your EQ, because the size of the room changes, the refraction of the sound in the room changes, and also the number of people is another thing that affects the sound, so you might want to tweak the EQ every time you move your amp in a different room. 3 would be the gain sweet spot. Many amps have a gain sweet spot. That means that going with the volume and the gain over a certain threshold, the amp will not sound as good as you might have hoped. The manufacturers are usually not very clear about what this sweet spot is, so we have to figure it out by ourselves. But if you think your amp sounds muffled, notes are not very clear, and you're not cutting through, just try to back down the gain or the volume until you find that sweet spot, until your sound will become clear again. And also what I've noticed that backing down the gain will actually result in a heavier sound, because the sound is much more clearer and tighter. Also, if you are using pedals, you might want to find not only the sweet spot in volume and gain on your amp, but also on the pedals, because there is an interaction there, and you have to consider both the gain on the pedals and the gain on your amp. 4 is the position. The position of your amp in the room can make all the difference between not being heard, and being annoying. Also, where you stand in the room will have an effect on how the sound reaches your ears, and as a consequence, how the amp sounds to you. So now I'm gonna share with you some things that I used to do in the rehearsals room or live. When rehearsing, what I do usually is making sure that I stand in the opposite side of the room relative to where the amp is. When I was younger, what I used to do was standing right in front of the amp, or just near it. And what happens is that the sound will hit you in the back and not in your ears directly. So you are not aware of all of the volume you are projecting onto the other players of your band. That will most likely cause you to upping the volume to the discomfort of everyone. Instead, if you stay far away from the amp, you will allow the sound to reach your ear in the same way that it's reached the ears of your bandmates. So you can keep the volume lower and you will also hear yourself better. One other thing that I do is making sure that I do not blast anyone directly in the face with my amp. And that's very important when playing live, because what happens when playing live is that usually we have the amp nearby us, and usually our ears are not at the level of the speaker, so we do not hear all the volume, but instead usually the audience is sitting down and the amp is blasting right into their faces, and what will happen is that they will leave. So what I do is turning the amp away from the audience, and also making sure not to kill the drummer, and just turning away in a way that doesn't hit anyone directly in the face. Another thing that I do is doing the sound check, standing where the final recipient of the sound will be. So if I'm playing live, I will do the sound check standing where the audience will be. In that way I can hear exactly what the audience will hear. And then I'll adjust the monitors just to hear myself on the stage. And another thing is that maybe in the studio, when I was younger, I used to set the sound standing at a higher level relative to the speaker. Instead, what is better in my opinion is to stand right where you're going to put the mic. That way you can hear what the mic will hear, and just fine-tuning your sound in an optimal way. You know what I mean? Number 5 is miking up your amp. If you don't have someone that knows what he's doing, results can be terrible. What I used to do when I was younger was just hanging the microphone, because I didn't have a mic stand, so I used to hang the microphone in front of the amp without caring about where the mic was exactly standing relative to the speaker, and also ignoring the fact that the angle of the mic is very, very important. And I was indeed destroying my sound, and I didn't know that. I didn't know that it made a difference, but it actually makes a great difference, and I'll show you right now. Of course, there are many kinds of microphones. Now we just talk about a dynamic microphone. I usually put it straight, perpendicular to the speaker, and I just try to find the right spot in which it doesn't sound too fuzzy, but it doesn't sound too muffled, okay? And usually, the more you are towards the center of the speaker, the more fuzzy it sounds. The more you get away from the center and going to the border, it will sound less fuzzy, but it will also lose some high end. So you might want to find the spot where you like it the most, and also the spot will let you do some post-production after the recording, you know, because if you cut all the treble and all the bass before, then you cannot add anything. I mean, it's much more difficult, at least. So what I did with the Mini Deluxe, for the clean sound, I just put the tone in the middle because it sounds good. I started from all the way up and reached the point that I liked the most, and it was with the tone in the middle, the drive barely there, and the volume like 3/4 all the way up. I plugged the Ultra Deluxe speaker into the headphones out. For the overdriven sound, I found the sweet spot on the amp and also on the tube screamer that I was using. With the microphone, what I did is I put it in between the center of the speaker and the border, basically. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope some of this was useful. If not, I'm sorry you lost all your time. And see you next time. Maybe subscribe, like, I don't know, if you want. You're not obliged, but why not? See you next time, guys.